When you're born, when you're a little baby, there's a million yous you could be. A doctor, a lawyer, a bank robber, happy, sad, all different kinds of versions of you. And then you start going through life, and you make this choice. He looks like a man. He is as far from human as they come.
We're adding new titles every day to our awesome collection of blockbuster movies. Download the app and subscribe. This isn't just a streaming channel. This is a bold new world of entertainment. Arise Play. Beyond streaming.
A very warm welcome to this week, 60 minutes of analytical review of the big stories, topical issues, and all the controversies around the world. I'm Sumner Sambo, and now to the headlines. Nigerian government plans to pay 5,000 naira to 40 million poor Nigerians as transport grant as it plans to remove fuel subsidy next year. But the Senate denies such provisions in the 2022 budget, and labor unions doubt its feasibility. And kidnapping resumes on the Abuja-Kaduna highway with more Nigerians abducted as court grants the federal government's request to declare bandits as terrorists. And the federal government rejects report of the Lagos State Judicial Panel on NSAS, says it's a ploy to embarrass President Muhammadu Buhari's administration and its agencies. The Nigerian government's plan to fully remove fuel subsidies mid-next year is definitely one of the tough decisions to be taken by the Muhammadu Buhari administration as the government struggles to fix the country's economy. It is a move that has been on the table for years as previous governments did not muster the political will to remove the fuel subsidy. Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed says the government will fully do so in June next year. And to mitigate the effect of the removal on the standard of living across the country, the government will grant transport support to about 30 to 40 million poor Nigerians who make up the poorest population in the country. Expectedly, Nigerians have been reacting to this move, with the Nigerian Labour Congress saying that it will continually reject any deregulation that is anchored on importation of petroleum products. It also doubts the statistics used to get the 30 to 40 million poor Nigerians, while the National Association of Nigerian Students is also threatening to shut down the country if the government goes ahead with the planned fuel subsidy removal. Let's listen to the Minister of Finance.
We're working with partners on measures to cushion potential negative impact of the removal of the subsidies on the most vulnerable at the bottom of the pyramid, at least 40% of the population. One of such measures will be to institute a monthly transport subsidy in the form of cash transfer of 5,000 naira to between 30 to 40 million deserving Nigerians. And this we're aiming to do using digital platforms, that there will be no physical cash transfers in this instance.
How do we raise this money to pay these 40 million Nigerians? Because I know that even at the subsidy or revenue being raised, our money that are coming in from this so-called oil and other sources of revenue to the federal government. So how do we? This is not provided for already in the budget as we have. We don't have anywhere in the budget where 40 million Nigeria at 5,000 naira equals this amount of about 2.4 trillion contained in that budget.
All right, joining me in the studio to discuss this critical issue is Professor Chris Nwokobia, convener of the Country First Movement. And we have an associate professor of law and Arise News analyst, Dr. Sam Amadi. And later on, we'll be joined by Ogbonna Ikuku, an economist who will help us make sense out of this subsidy issue that's been around for several years. And I'll come to you, Prof. Nwokobia. I mean, yeah, so the debate is on again, gentlemen. We are saying this challenge, first of all, starting from the National Assembly, saying that, look, you say you're going to pay this monies to 40 million poor Nigerians. You didn't make provisions for it in the 2022 budget. Are we hoping to see that as a supplementary budget coming in? Let's start with that before we go to the labor unions.
Certain things that come from the angle of the executive bothers me, worries me deeply. And what is the more befuddling is the fact that every so often our dear government and Mr. President tries to attempt a new policy shift. This thing about the poorest of the poor and this thing about paying cash transfers comes back, and I wonder why those who advise our dear President and government do not interrogate these issues. Since 2014, 2015, we've been hearing about 10,000
social investment,
another one is 20,000 to the poorest of poor, another one is to mark, and you don't see this whole thing play out in the economy. I think that the time has come for our dear President to interrogate those who advise him in terms of the economy and how these policies happen. Because simple calculation, I'm not a mathematician, but I know that if you were to pay 5,000 to 40 million persons, it would be about 200 billion. 200 billion.
I mean,
and then
seen all of those
you're
figures
going
being
to throw
circulated everywhere.
Humongous figure. And then you're saying that the reason you want to do that is because you want to remove subsidy. My worry simply is twofold. The first is, who's coming out with this kind of policy at this point? The several cash payments, how well has it helped to reflate the economy? How well has it done in taking the poorest of the poor, if you allow that word, out of poverty? That's question number one. Then the second one, which is very important, is if you want to remove subsidy, are you creating another subsidy? Because talking about 200 billion to the poorest of the poor, that's humongous. Why can't we just come with effective policy programmatic that will gradually see the phasing of, because if you were to plow the 200 billion every month into the economy in creating jobs, in creating skill acquisition centers and giving to directly through the banks funds to those who have been trained. I'm not talking about
the government has been doing that. We've got all the Jeep and all the
I think that the time has come for us to interrogate whatever policy programmatics will throw up. Because save and accept that is done, labor will fight, the civil society will fight, and at the end of the day, that which appears laudable, which is it's time to remove subsidy, becomes another problem, and you don't get that.
Let's come to you, Doc. This issue, like I said, It's one that the National Assembly has thrown the first shot. Look, there's no provision for this in the 2022 budget. So are we expecting a supplementary budget? What magic is the government going to do to provide this 5,000 naira to about 40 million Nigerians ahead of its removal in 2022?
Well, I don't think it's much problem. I mean, that's why they have supplementary budget. So if this government policy, they work out the costs, both in terms of the transfers and the administration of the transfer itself, and then they have to put in the budget, also based on the calculation of what gains that policy makes. So if you deregulate completely and sell petroleum at, let's say, 350 to 400 naira per litre, as people are saying, and power moves maybe by 200 or so, 200 or so percent or 100%, whatever it is. The idea is that the revenue stream of government improves. So the budget is based on a certain revenue projection largely based on oil and non-oil contribution to GDP. So if this deregulation creates revenue flow, so the government can benchmark on that. Again, in the short to medium term, government can also borrow. They borrow a lot. So they can also say, look, or kind of redistribute some of the expenditure heads and put more on this cash stuff. But the bigger question is the economics of it as well. Because
and how did they get that data of 40 million Nigerians?
If you look at the IMF first, 40 million, where the minister says at least 40 million. So
it's between poverty, 30 to 40.
Yeah, the poverty line, there are more people in poor people in Nigeria, more than 40 million. If it's real poor, if it's the extreme MBS calculation as at 2020, 2019, they said at least 40% of Nigerians are poor. So if we're about 120 million, 220 as estimated, that means at least we're talking about more than maybe 80 million Nigerians are poor. But they're going to use a criteria. The problem is that the rigor is not there. You have to define who is going to get it. Again, 5,000, when you're doing cash transfers to deal with the impact of a subsidy removal, you look at quantity. Is it enough quantity to create a momentum? You look at targeting, and then you look at incentives. So if you give people 5,000 naira, they could spend it elsewhere and not mitigate the impact of...
Yeah, but the thing here is that this same government has been spending these monies right from inception.
And we've not seen evidence that this...
And that's why a lot of Nigerians are not...
Or even controlled... You are going to overinflate the economy. Inflation will rise generally, because if you put that amount of money in people's hand, the main mention of it was all the dodgy award and impact. Manufacturers, sellers, merchants will probably do opportunistic increase in tariffs.
Okay, very interesting indeed. Now let's talk about the labor union saying that, look, any regulation that's based on importation of petroleum products, they will definitely not back it. Do they make any sense there?
Somna, let me say that I'm going to approach this question from two angles. I've always said that the time has come for our dear president and government to understand that those who criticize government are actually friends of government. They want the government to succeed. That's the first point we must note. And then when Labour says no to any deregulation that's centered on importation of product, they are absolutely correct. Let me tell you why. Since 2014, 2015, we did talk about the need to fix our refineries.
Yeah, and the government actually says we are having Dangote refinery next year.
Let me land. Remember Ibe Kachuku's prognosis and time frames he gave us until 2020. He said this must be done, that must be done. And Nigerians were called up to support the policy programmatic of government at that point. Nothing came through. Now, you're telling us that come June next year, you would deregulate the sector. Is Dangote, for instance, refinery set to come on stream in June? Dangote hasn't told you that, because he says they did not envisage this level of work. About 600,000 barrels per day, the biggest refinery in the whole world. It's taking them longer than scheduled. Yeah. Please let me...
No, I've just been told we are going on a break, so when we come back from that break, I will allow you to land. You're still watching This Week on the Rise News. We'll now go on a short break. When we come back, we'll continue with the conversation. Stay with us. All right. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, actually says that they support the federal government's removal of this fuel subsidy by the administration, by President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. And they are saying that they've always asked the Nigerian government to focus on removing this fuel subsidy so that a lot of Nigerians will be able to benefit more. But will that be the case if this is achieved? And I'll come back to you based on what you were saying. The supply of petroleum products in the country will be improved according to the government when the Dangote refinery, for example, comes on stream mid-next year, hopefully, and then some other smaller refineries. You were making a point before we went on break.
I agree that we must remove subsidy if we want to grow this economy. I agree that certain things must be done, and perhaps that's why the PIB bill was signed into law. But fundamentally, we must anticipate what will happen should the government remove subsidy come June. Let's believe, assuming but not considering that Dangote refinery comes on stream, would Dangote refinery be able to produce enough fuel to service the economy? Because if eventually Dangote refinery is not able to meet of the local demand, that means that you will still import, and that will snowball the price of petroleum products in Nigeria. That also will affect the masses of our people negatively. So what is important is that, and that's why on the side of IPMAN, yes, you have to remove, but you have to work towards removal of subsidy. You must do it efficiently and effectually. And what do I mean? Ensure that there is, between now and that period, sufficient avenues for local production. That's what NLC is saying. We must be sure that Dangote will 600,000 barrels per day, or over 600. Yes, if it's effective, if they come on stream, they perhaps will be able to meet local demand. And so the price of petroleum products may not rise too much. But how sure are we? Like I said initially, Dangote, in a very recent meeting with the CBN governor and several that came on, is saying that, oh, yes, we will try to meet target. But we're not sure. And so we must be careful what policy we throw in the public space.
All right, before I come to you, I've just been told that Ogbonna Ikuku, who is an economist, is joining us right now. Let's just get his view. And what exactly do you think IPMAN is trying to make by this statement, when it says that it's backing the federal government and that the labor union, that's the Nigerian Labour Congress, has to calm down and understand what is going on at the moment? Don't you think that the labor unions are divided at this point on this very critical issue?
See, it comes to a time when reality, becomes very glaring. Everybody knows these are the times that we're in. IPMAN, yes, they understand because they are the actual players in the petroleum industry, so they understand what happens real time in the industry. So if they have taken a position which is right, they've taken the right position. So NLC has to also sit back and understand that whether you like it or not, if you want more investment, if you want scaling, you want specialization, you want productivity, you must have the right players, you must have a clear corridor where investors can come and play. And then if you don't give them that, you see, any sector where you have where prices are regulated, you hardly find real investors want to come and play there, because they are not sure what happens in the next, what was the next decision that will come when is government regulating it. So IPMAN has taken a right position. NLC needs to sit back and also begin to ask their members, because whether you like it or not, we must begin to ask NLC some very simple questions. Did the politicians, or I'm not holding brief for the politicians never ran some of these refineries down. Their members did. So what did they do to their members who were the ones running these refineries? Whether you like it or not, PDP, APC, they come and go. The only constant thing are in Nigeria, actually the workforce. The workforce who are members of NLC, it's time we begin to ask them questions. What did you do while you were in office? Why you manned so office and all of that? So, you see, the reality has come. So we need to just face it. Is that we'll take this decision now and, become better for it as a nation, or we want to, just, do our normal solidarity thing, fighting good cause and then saying we want to fight good cause, standing by, some negative solidarity. So that is where we are, and I think we should just take that decision and move on.
Now, if I may come in at the moment, the labor union is very specific in saying that the regulation should not be removed when we are still importing fuel into the country. Don't you think that they are making a lot of sense there?
It's a chicken and egg thing. Which comes first? You see, whether you like it or not, okay, who will be paying for the subsidy while you're waiting for the refineries to come on stream? Don't forget, there are investors who are hanging on the fence who just want to see that you have removed some of this subsidy, that government is not regulating price so that they can come in and play. So, like I said, it's a decision we have to take. But it's just that we need to be strategic in the kind of investment we're going to make right now to see how we can, provide palliatives to support the system so that the inflation will not hit us so much. There are specific steps we must take as government, to see how we can cushion the effect of, the multiplier effect that will, follow suit as soon as you deregulate the market. So pretty much, I don't think we're making a mistake by deregulating.
You just hold on there, Ogbonna, and I'll come back to you, Dr. Sam Amadi. In all of this, should we trust the government ahead of that fuel subsidy removal? Because a lot of people think that, yeah, we may be saving some monies, but the government is not trustworthy enough to be able to manage the savings that we'll have.
Absolutely. I think there's, like we say, economics is too important to be left economists. Some of us who are also studying political economy understand. If you look at the IMF briefing, IMF was very clear that this would need very strategic social assistance. And the reason why they said that is because it's going to unbalance income and household welfare. It could actually aggravate poverty. The question is, does the Nigerian state, does it have a policy infrastructure that enables it to do proper social intervention that has impact? Again, if you look at the US and global economy, in the pandemic, subsidies are not necessarily evil, because what they build back better is basically a subsidy framework to support homes, healthcare, everything, to give people the bounce to face, especially when an economy is almost getting to a depression stage. So the argument for Nigeria is, in economic sense, is that, look, if you're going to remove this subsidy, you're going to save balance sheet. It's public sector borrowing support. Government is going to spend less. But again, if government does not have the interventions clarified and in the volume enough to support and targeted and manage with incentives in the way that people, for example, if we are a train, have trains, you can give people tickets, okay? So you know that they are using that ticket for travel.
Yeah,
so it's not going to inflate,
especially
you need to, unintended consequences, and again, you are sure you're mitigating the impact of transport costs. So this is an economy, when our economists talk about this, without a framework, grasp as to the intricacies, the play between social science and economics. Because they don't just say, okay, do this, the behavioral pattern, the incentive structure, we misdirect, and that's why we're seeing none of these interventions have worked. By the way, this should have worked better under Jonathan, because that time we didn't have the COVID, we didn't have this economy was better. So the impact would have been better cushioned. But APC government fought against it. And now, I pity them because it's difficult, weak government, lack of credibility. Look at the NSAS report. The World Bank, IMF says you have to build a coalition. But how can you build a coalition when the government itself is suffering so much loss of confidence with the civil society?
Very interesting position you've got there. We just have to go on another break. When we come back from this second break, we'll actually continue on this conversation because it's becoming much more important. A lot of Nigerians really need to know what the government is up to. Just stay with us as we go on this short break. Welcome back. You're still watching This Week on Arise News, and I have with me here Professor Chris Nwokobia, who is the convener of the Country First Movement, and I have Associate Professor of Law, Dr. Sam Amadi, here with us. And we have our guest over there at the Overflow Studio, Bona Ikuku. And I'll just come back to you on this critical issue, the political backlash that may follow. A lot of Nigerians are already saying that maybe it's in anticipation for 2023 that the APC is bringing this policy. Some party members are afraid it may affect the fortunes of the party negatively if they go ahead with this total fuel subsidy removal, while some skeptics and opposition members are saying that the APC is trying to look for money to campaign for 2023. Your views?
Let me say clearly that for me, because I am in the party, I think that the fears are valid, what it will do to the party. But I believe it's a policy in the works. They're testing the waters. That's what I think. And I think that with what is happening and the views as expressed by the Nigerian people, the party will go back and look at how to effectively and properly address it. Because Yayi, the guy in the Senate, has spoken nicely about the fact that, oh, where are you going to get 200 billion every month from? We haven't budgeted. Are you coming back with, and then how do you identify the 40 million Nigerians who you call the poorest of the poor? And then the monies you allegedly have been paying in the name of social investment, where are they going to? I think that the time has come for our dear president and government to interrogate some of these policies and then call those who are churning out these policies to order. The time has come for us to think about our country first and think about how we'll build a new thinking and leadership which must put the masses of our people, indeed the hot oil first, before political interest. And
all right, very interesting. And I'll come to you, Bona Ikuku. What do you anticipate any political backlash against the APC if it goes ahead to do this? Because the World Bank advised President Muhammadu Buhari then, as president-elect, that once he comes in 2015, he should do it and, go through that whole hog because of the political goodwill that he had as at then, but he refused to do that. Now, if the president is doing it just when it's about exiting, don't you think that the backlash will now be on his party? And do you think that the APC is willing to be able to face Nigerians with this fuel subsidy removal in 2023?
I think it's just a matter of being able to communicate to Nigerians to understand. That's why people like us we're here to make sure we try as much as we can to use every avenue that we find to tell Nigerians, it's a decision that we must take. This thing we have been doing will not help the nation. We must get out of this subsidy issue if we're able to communicate adequately, because the critical mass of having an enlightened population, that's actually what brings about productivity that you need as for your nation to grow. So pretty much it's a decision that has been taken, and I think people need to, stakeholders, no matter the divide that you belong to, you need to talk to your followers, as leaders need to start talking to their followers, because whether we like it or not, if we don't take this decision now and we take it tomorrow, it will still hurt. So it's better that we take the decision. Everybody's forgetting. We all shout China, China. Everybody's forgetting that a time in the past, China closed its borders. They decided people used to wear uniform in China. Okay, just to make sure that they curb their appetite for foreign goods and all of that. It would have hurt people then. People would have actually suffered, but they took time, took the decision, and today they are better off for it. So I think we have to just, as stakeholders, begin to get that information out there that it is not a bad decision. Yes, it's going to hurt, but we need to just stand by it and make sure that it works once and for all.
Ogbonna Ikuku, an economist, speaking with us on this matter. We must thank you at this moment for joining us on this conversation. And I come to you just before we leave this conversation. The political backlash that may happen, how do you think the PDP, for example, will take advantage of this situation? And secondly, the believability of this government is very low on this first subsidy removal, because they've said it over time that they've removed subsidy. All of a sudden, you keep seeing subsidies being paid. Even federal lawmakers from the APC saying that there's no subsidy payment captured in several budgets, yet the government is paying. Do you think President Buhari can be trusted again with this rhetoric of total or full removal of fuel subsidy and then replacing, it with palliatives and all of that?
No, I don't think they can be trusted, but that does not mean we shouldn't do it. I mean, there's two issues to clarify. And sometimes Nigerian economists are either too lazy or not thoroughly understand the economics themselves. No two countries are the same. For example, China. China is a country with very low inequality. It's a country with very low even foreign travel of leaders, very low importation. So it's a country that's running a developmental state where the leaders and the people are committed to strategic national interests. So if China says have only one child, the level of compliance will be high. They can trust them to a large extent. This is a country where we are importing everything. This is a country where we opt out of rules. So the first is there's an elite lack of trust. People don't believe government, not just APC government, but generally governments in Nigeria, because they don't walk the talk. Two, they don't level up. We don't even know. They say there's no subsidy, but there's so much subsidy being paid.
Yeah, I mean,
so why do trust?
It's been an extra budgetary.
The problem they have now is that there's a character of a state that can push through this kind of very, hurting policy that may be the right policy, but has so much human cost. It's a state that first that is not corrupt. Instead, look at what happened with the COVID interventions and palliatives across the country. And so you are talking to people who have been severely betrayed. And then you need to mop up support of NGOs, civil society, employers, employees, people who are even old money. You need even to synchronize the government at the level of states. So we need a lot of work to do. And so rushing out to this policy.
All you're saying that there is a trust deficit.
And they have to rebuild it. And they should be more strategic and not be too, don't act as if World Bank is telling you what to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thinking a lot of people have been saying. If it's original World Bank and IMF
exactly.
All right, I'm afraid we just have to go on to other stories now. Despite surveillance by security agencies on the Abuja-Kaduna highway, incidents of kidnapping and armed robbery continue to be on the rise. Videos posted on social media by stranded commuters and eyewitnesses of kidnapped victims show how bad the situation has become, with bandits and kidnappers on the prowl. From farmers to businessmen and women to traders, politicians and students, no one is spared on the Abuja-Kaduna Expressway as bandits operate at will, even as security operatives try to reduce the attacks. Meanwhile, a federal high court sitting in Abuja has outlawed groups linked to banditry and declared the activities as acts of terrorism. The court asked President Muhammadu Buhari to publish the proscription order in the official gazette and 2 national dailies. Let's just take a listen.
Way back.
Told that we just have to go ahead. All right, I've been told that we just have to go ahead. Well, joining us virtually is Dennis Amakri, who's a former assistant director of the Department of State Services. Joining us virtually from Lagos, and of course I still have Professor Chris Nwakobia here and Dr. Sam Amadi, an associate professor of law, all here with me in the studio. And I go straight to you, Mr. Amakri. It's been a challenging moment for a lot of Nigerians. We are losing a lot of economic activities on the Abuja-Kaduna highway, which is the navel between northern and southern Nigeria. Can you just take us through why some of the security measures being put in place seem to be failing every now and then?
Well, thank you for having me. You see, that particular road has come to security interests for more than a year now. And then, of course, I don't know if some of the suggested security measures were put in place, because actually to, monitor that particular road is to go ahead and then put some very important security measures, of which technology plays a very important part. And then what we could do is to put maybe 1 or 2 eye in the sky over there, and then of course get quick response teams that are located intermittently along the road. And all this will happen, all these things will not be happening. But right now we have these people coming out from those areas that we have declared to be ungoverned spaces, to be striking and then running back to where they are. I think we should be able to handle it right now, especially with the declaration of the bandits as terrorists. I think the road is now clear for us to use our Tucano superjets. Okay.
The government has actually told us through the military that they have some eyes in the sky, just like you have said, that they were the Air Force told us that they were deploying, what's it called, a helicopter to actually ensure that they go through the entire Abuja-Kaduna stretch almost every day. And they were deploying some soldiers, especially some female soldiers that were sent there over some time. Yeah, we saw a reduction in activities. But now we are seeing a full resumption. Does it mean that these bandits have actually seen that there's a loophole in the security architecture of managing such a highway? That's why they are, taking advantage of it. And what's the use of sending an helicopter, from Abuja to Kaduna, and yet we don't get results?
Well, we have been using all kinds of measures without gaining from it. Yes, I'm very much aware when they deploy the female soldiers there, even NSCDC people there. But you just can't be reacting by putting people out there thinking that that is going to solve the problem. You have to be very systematic, and the way you can do it is to put that whole road under surveillance. Put it under surveillance, and then not just surveillance, but the response team. Because if there are 1 or 2 drones that are running around there, giving real-time information to the security control room, the helicopters or whoever will take off immediately, and then, of course, preempt them, because they are not hanging by the road. They will be moving from the bush up to the road. And I think that should give us some kind of 15 or 10 minutes response time. So I believe that the Tornadoes are going to help too, because they have been designed to take care of situations like this. Although we were not able to use them before because of nomenclature. We cannot use it against bandits, only for terrorists. So I think that should be out now.
Okay, and I come back to the studio here while you hang on with us. Let's start with you. I mean, does it seem like we are losing the battle against these bandits? Because every now and then we hear the military saying they are bombarding them, they smoked them out, and then all of a sudden we see them banding together. Like, for example, one of the days during the week, we saw the bandits striking twice in a day along the same stretch. Don't you think they are trying to actually dare the military and tell them that, look, your actions are nothing to us?
Somehow, I think that what the court has just done is very instructive, because there's a level of reaction or military actions that you can take against certain individuals. You have to handle crime differently. And so, like the former DSS boss noted, what is important is that now that you no longer have the caption of bandits hanging over them, and then you can call them terrorists,
so perhaps they can be smoked out.
Perhaps government will take maximum action to deal with these issues. But I think that chiefly what is important is that when this government came into power, we kept talking about the body language of Mr. President. I think now is the time to bring that body language to bear.
Well, I hope that hasn't expired, because we don't have less than 18 months.
Now is the time to show the tough guy. Now is the time to say to the bandits who are now, I pray the government takes the action of the courts and formally declares them as terrorists, and government takes effective, efficient and effectual action. Get the Tucano. You paid for it. We paid heavily for it. Taxpayers' money went into it. Get the armed forces.
It's just that the Air Force also has to be very careful not to bomb, civilians and all of that. I come to you, Dr. Sam. Is there a failure of intelligence? Our security forces failing in their intelligence gathering?
I think you've answered the answer. You've asked the right question. You see, Nigerians don't give up. We like to believe the impossible. Even when we fail, we want to find a way to say we've not failed. For 6 years, what we are seeing with the Kaduna and elsewhere is brokenness. The government has failed. It doesn't seem to be. Yes, redesignating bandits as terrorists helps you to cut off terror financing largely. So people are on the notice that, look, this is a terror group. So if I get involved in any way, it may stop recruitment, because people are going to be, those who commingle with them on the flimsy excuse that they are co-religionists or tri-ethnic or whatever social group will now pull back. That's what it does for you. But the fighting power, the strategy, the fact that you need to have a coherent and well laid out plan, and I have the military command that are invested in winning the battle is something that you don't get through a court pronouncement. So what we see that, look, the government failed in the last 6 years to track this. There's no center of insecurity where we have come out strong, where we have defeated the enemy. You talked about what happened in Kaduna, the same spot, the same time, twice in a day. You don't need America authorization or to go. If you must only defeat those bandits who come from the forest and run back only when you use a Tucano jet, then you are not ready for this. So I think that's the failure cuts across strategy, implementation, command and control. And maybe even the morale of our fighting force seems to be low, because we can't be suffering this level of reversal. Even in the war front in the Northeast, we're not getting the best of everything. So I think it's a failure. Like I said, we may get it right, but we have to start from the fact that we actually failed in the last 6 years to deal with this.
Okay. And Mr. Makri, I come back to you on the issues of intelligence. Now, we've invested so much in the DMI, the NIA, the DSS, and a whole lot of these agencies. What more do you think we need to do? Because, I mean, if some of these operatives, for example, of your former agency, the DSS, are sent in as ordinary civilians to mingle with a lot of these people, it may be a little bit easier to be able to smoke out the industry that has been built around this kidnapping. But we don't see that happening. So why are we losing the battle when it comes to intelligence? Because they keep telling us that the kinetic actions may not necessarily be needed all the time. So we have to invest so much on non-kinetic. And we've been doing that, but the results have not been pouring in. How do we rejig these agencies?
Maybe there are a lot of things under the carpet that you don't know. You see, the security agencies are doing very well. When it comes to intelligence gathering, I think they are doing very, very fantastic. Because for all the successes, the wins that they've got so far is due to intelligence. But you know, intelligence is also not 100%, whereby you will say that, oh, because of a failure, then the intelligence have failed. But one thing I believe strongly here is that we are leaving the fight for the military and security forces alone. You know, we have to change our strategy, changing it in the sense of adopting an all-society approach, whereby everybody is involved. You know, I remember during the war, you know, the Civil War, they were conscripting people. But here we have a voluntary army, but the people are just sitting back and watching. I think if everybody gets involved, then I think we should be able to find the headway, because come to think about it, the fuel they buy, the motorcycles they are using are bought for them, the cars, who are the people buying it for them? They are in the society. And we can, you know, people in the society can't tell about these people. How about the AK-47? One AK-47 is about 400,000 naira. Those people you are seeing are not the people who are buying them. That means there are other people that are financing this. So we need the society to get involved. That way, they should be able to, you know, bring this thing to an end.
And that's where the intelligence issues come in. But we must thank you at this point, Dennis Amakri, former Assistant Director, Department of State Service, for joining us on the show. And I come back to you in the studio. Let's talk about how we can win this war on banditry and kidnapping, because it's not just happening in the north. I mean, it's a big business across the country, and a lot of people don't seem to be punished. We've seen some state governments demolishing the houses of kingpins and all of that, but it seems not to just be enough. As we're getting into the Christmas season, I'm telling you, these guys are also planning. How do you think we can reduce this?
No, at the core is the effectiveness of our intelligence gathering, at the core. You know, because...
but he has just said that they are doing the best that they can.
They know. I think that with all sense of respect, you know why he would speak the way he is, and that's understood. But what we must do is to put a primacy, proper primacy on lives and properties. And if you're spending so much on defense, they should give us sufficient results. And that's why I think that the time has come for our dear president to understand that when we say certain things must be done rightly, that you must rejig the security architecture, you must improve on intelligence.
Well, the president
it is important. And we must do that.
He has been doing that during the week. He held a security
must
meeting.
Be done differently.
All right. We just have to move on straight quickly because we're losing time here to the next story. The federal government has rejected and described as recycled fake news the report of the Lagos State Judicial Panel on the Lekki NSAS shooting that occurred last year, leaving many Nigerians confused, including journalists. The Lagos Judicial Panel admitted that there were 9 deaths recorded during the Lekki toll gate protest incident and made recommendations for adequate compensation. But in a swift reaction, the federal government, through the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, said the report focused on unreliable evidences and social media rumors. He also described it as a calculated plot to embarrass President Muhammadu Buhari's government and its agencies. The minister said there should be more investigation into the matter to ascertain what really happened at the Lekki toll gate. I will just come to you, Dr. Sam. You're a lawyer. You know what it means to actually set up a judicial panel of inquiry. What does it mean when a judicial panel actually brings out a report, having followed all through judicial processes, and then giving it to the state government? What's the next thing to happen?
Well, clearly the next thing to happen is in government bureaucracies to have a white paper, which is where the government recognizes that, that those recommendations and decide on actionable parts of it. But again, the nature of judicial inquiry is that it's a fact finding. That means they didn't just sit and provide analytics. They went into cross-examination, took evidence,
including lawyers, from government officials
and lawyers and parties. So, and the judge heading it, suppose a degree of judicial scrutiny close to what a high court would do in a proper trial. Again, the government of Nigeria has a right to disagree with reports, but the language first, respect to state government. This is federalism. The matter happened in Lekki. The Lagos state government inaugurated that panel, and therefore the federal government should defer, show respect to the state government.
Are you saying that government should have waited until the white paper was out?
Because the white paper actually is actionable at the side of the state. So even if federal officials may be punished, maybe police officers, they're going to be punished under the criminal code or laws that the Lagos state government has. The second point is that you can say something like, look, we want further investigation. There's nothing wrong about that.
Yeah, they actually said
absolutely. There's no problem. But then going ahead to say to embarrass government. So the question then is it the Lagos state government that wants to embarrass the federal government, then the same political party, the government set up this, they had military attended, they have representation, they had from civil society, they had also lawyers. So the ease of deploying the rhetoric, embarrass government, weakens what may look like a reasonable argument. So if government was more, the Attorney General should have responded, not the Minister of Information.
Because very oftentimes now when you hear Lai Mohammed saying that it's full of recycled fake news and all of that, what do you make of it?
I think he went overboard. He threw a very dangerous blow at what should have helped ultimately the federal government. Because like we just noted, if he had waited for the white paper from Lagos state government, and then Lagos state government decides to take responsibility along the line of the way, must he comment?
Well, the federal government was being asked to say something at least.
Then the Attorney General would have done that because it's within the purview of the law. So I think that sometimes, like I noted, we must learn to remove this imagery of critics of government as enemies of government.
Yeah, and a lot of people were even saying that even if Lai Mohammed was saying the truth, that because of the low believability that he has,
absolutely.
In fact, a lot of Nigerians don't believe that.
Government should often, in communication, they should probably screen him out of certain
because he actually made some points.
Yes, some good points.
He made some very good points.
But the way he went about it, and you don't call a major report from
a government
institution, the recycled junk, impliedly. That was what he was saying. And I think that the time has come for us to make Lai Mohammed understand that not every thought or view that opposes the government is anti or is a product of enmity. The time has come for us to understand that collectively we must build what you call the social capital needed to redeem and rescue our country.
Okay, as we try to round off this conversation, there was also these allegations of threats by panel members that the same Lagos state government will be held responsible if anything happens to them. Because it looks like some hoodlums have been sent to attack them here and there.
Well,
do you think that the Lagos state governor was also angry that they leaked the report?
Well, there have been those stories about leakage of report, but again, you see, the responsibility of their protecting those members of the panel is on the state government. They should be prime persons for tight security provision. If you look at the U.S. elsewhere, people who do this kind of job that probably indict government, assuming, for example, this report indicted the civil society, they could also face attack from the civil society or those who feel that they are sellout. So I think they're in a precarious situation and government should provide them support. Again, back to what we are saying, these are processes we should engage. It does not mean that the federal government is wrong. In fact, even if people were killed, it does not mean that the president authorized killing. It doesn't mean that the head of army, the people don't see the difference. It could be that army made a mistake, and the U.S. armies make mistake. For example, Abu Ghraib, at the point they said, we erred. If the federal government, for example, had said, well, some guy, we asked them to go there, for example, for peacekeeping or to watch, but some mistakes were made, we pay compensation. So basically, this is not something we have to slug it out in the mud with everybody all the time.
In essence, the Lagos state government should still go ahead and bring its white paper and gazette it.
And protect those.
Go ahead to protect those who serve the
because they serve the
very interesting, gentlemen. I must thank you, Professor Chris Mwakobia, convener of the Country First Movement, and Dr. Sam Amadi, who's a Arise News analyst and an associate professor of law. We must thank you so much. Alongside Dennis Amakri, who joined us, is a former assistant director of the Department of State Service, and Ogbonna Ikuku, an economist, earlier joined us on the show. Well, that's how it's been for this fantastic show this weekend. Another edition of This Week. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm Somna Sambo.